Welcome to episode 5 of Tales from a Disappearing City. Joined once again by my good friend Howard Slater, aka Flint Michigan. How you doing, Howard?
Fine, thanks, mate. Yeah, great.
Last time we talked a little bit about like your early sort of record buying. We talked about moving to London, going to squats, playing like weird jazz improv sessions, and then getting a bit into the early techno scene. In London, and starting to go to see some events and checking out a bit of that sort of music. Do you want to lead on from there, really, or?
Leading on from there, I guess. I think we mentioned last time there was the techno stuff was it wasn't embraced by everybody like you may have expected. It had a bit of a I wouldn't say bad reputation, but musically it was seen as like marching music and all this sort of stuff, brainless, this kind of thing.
Yeah, you talked about your friends. Your friends on, was it maybe the jazz improv scene, or was that, or like the improv scene, or was that more in general? A
little bit on the jazz improv scene, because of course, like in the improv scene, people would be very natural in a sense that any artificiality was deemed passé, that you had to constantly reinvent inside the track sort of thing, and that could become as formulaic as the things they were not as interested in, like the dance music or the techno. But so for me, it really took off with the Pirates, living in Hackney, accessing these record shops that cropped up all over. And it drove me to the point of like writing about it in about 92, and an essay a text called Public Energy, which I think was a Speedy J track,
it was on Probe Records.
Yeah,
it's on Probe Records, which is like a sub label from Plus 8. I used to play that tune a lot.
Yeah, it had a light energy flash. It had, it just seemed like a good title. So the sort of writing, I'd had that experience writing stuff before, and it was like, well, I sort of channeled a lot of energy into researching it, thinking about it, and sort of writing about it. In a way, it was a way to sort of combat the criticism of it as well. It was to take it seriously. So the writing was midway between journalism and sort of academic style, even though I haven't been an academic. So it was picked up by a friend of mine, Matthew and Graham, who ran what was called a bulletin board in South London called Fast Breeder. And that was a very early...
Yeah, do you want to explain what a bulletin board was to those like of a younger generation? Because again, it's an old-fashioned sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely. It'd be a bit hard to explain it, but it was just sort of a internet platform, very rudimentary. Mainly you're uploading text.
I guess it was like a forum. I guess it was like a sort of a forum, wasn't it, where you could post topics?
That's it, yeah.
Did you say that, or...?
No, that's as good a description as I could think of myself, definitely. So it was an early form of website, really. Not as versatile, I suppose, as it later became. So,
because I will say some of the early internet stuff, like they was disseminating all that sort of information on like bulletin boards. I remember it from the 80s and the early 90s. So kind of like the early internet was like a little wild west where you could start finding out about all these weird sort of subcultures.
Absolutely. It was more of a free space, wasn't it? In that sense, it was not as commercial.
No, it was. No, it hadn't been colonized by all the corporations yet.
Exactly. I mean, there was a period when the internet actually was fully commercialised. I don't know what laws or what they put into it, but now if you search something, you're going to get, I'm noticing you're going to get, if you're researching something from mythology, you'll probably find out that what crops up is a company in Japan. So the actual, anyway, that's the side, that's the sideline type issue. So, and then there was a sort of scene in South London, a sort of like underground scene. Jason was involved in it, Matthew Fuller, Graham Harwood, and others. and they produced like a big underground paper, a bit like International Times. So
yeah,
this scene based in Elephant and Castle, basically an oval. It was like I was linked into it as a sort of writer from the, you know, do-it-yourself, anarcho music, you know, this sort of scene. And Jason Skeet got in contact with me and sort of said, "Oh, can I publish your Public Energy essay?" And I said, yeah. So he was running a thing called the Fatuous Times. So that Public Energy article came out in that. And then from there, me and Jason sort of formed TechNet, which was kind of it was kind of like basically a flyer, A3 folded up. And we deposit it in record shops in town. With the flyers, it was free. So part of the inspiration may have been coming across zines like Under One Sky from America. It was probably the first techno zine I came across. And and there was also, let me think, seeing the Underground Resistance album, that was a big movement, a big moment, because it was they were similarly putting forward techno as an underground politicized music. You know what I mean?
Is this the one called Revolution for a Change?
That's the one, yeah.
Is that?
It was
yeah, because I think that was a compilation album of all their tracks. Yeah.
So that was an entry point for me into UR. But they were like, they were kind of militant in a way, and it was like, well, other people are thinking of this music in these terms. You know what I mean? It's not just club music. Yeah. It's a movement, and it has an impact on people. So with TechNet, the idea was really to put forward the techno as an underground music, not solely club-based, but as a kind of counterculture. So through Jason, we met Christoph and Praxis, and at that time there was a guy, DJ Sparker, and Nomex filtered in, was also there at that time. This was the pre-planning period for Dead by Dawn, really. We was hanging out, exchanging information. Christoph was putting out Alien Underground, in which Joel, Deadly Buddha, was published, who you've mentioned last time, I think. We mentioned Joel. I think I mentioned how Joel was actually, Joel introduced me to Christoph because he played down Dead by Dawn, and I think that's how I linked up with you lot, really, through that. That's right. I've got a folder. I've seen some of the flyers I've still got, and you're on them, obviously. And Joel, Deadly Buddha, is on. That opens up a whole area. But just backtracking before that, Christoph was putting out a newsletter as well, Praxis newsletter, and I think the moniker Flint Michigan was first published in a Praxis newsletter in a thing called Crowds and Power. So you can see what we're sort of thinking about this movement. What does that mean, Howard? What does that mean? How do you mean? Crowds and Power. What does that mean, Crowds and Power? Well, it was a book by Elias Canati, and it was like a kind of study of crowds and the power of crowds, for better or for worse. Oh, okay, sorry. I thought you said Crowds and Power. I thought it was some German term. No, Crowds and Power. Yeah. Maybe Christoph will be able to translate that. Probably some obscene word. Yeah. But, okay. No. Actually, I do know what you're talking about. Yeah. No, that's fine. Yeah. Sorry about that. We're looking at what can people do when they come together, kind of a thing, and that's very much my experience of the rave scene and the underground culture of that time. With the mix was really, really exciting of different tribes, so to speak, of the 80s. We've touched the industrial people, the soul lads, the funks, breakbeat stuff, hip hop, electro, all sort of merging together. You know, like I remember thinking,
yeah, it was a big revolution in music and culture at that time, and like you said, it was again, it was maybe like the internet. It was before it got like commodified and it got put into its little groups. But like you said, there was loads of people from different areas coming together at that time. You know, it wasn't so compartmentalized, I guess, or into the different genres.
Yeah, I suppose you've got the poll tax riot as well, which was a unit. You know, poll tax rebellion is at the is a political parallel to the techno movement coming up, the hardcore scene and the raves. You know, like that was a big mobilizing thing for people. You know,
So that was April 1990.
Yeah, so I remember being on the Trafalgar Square, right, and people saying, "Oh, football fans will be coming down now. It's it's 5:15." You know, so there's this sense that all the tribes were coming. You know, like, so they'll sort the bill out. You know what I mean, like type of thing. The season crew. So there was all that was sort of bubbling about and. Really trying to speak up for this music, which was, as we've said before, the common put down was faceless techno bollocks. So we, at that time...
And obviously Rising High actually used that on a T-shirt, didn't they? That was the little...
Yeah, so it was like, we kind of... Well, we took a phrase from a book by Gilles Deleuze and Felix Guattari, and they were... philosophers of the post-68 who were interested in stretching the boundaries of politics a bit. So it was like music itself can be a political force in itself. So prior to that, politics in music would be in the language, crass. It would be a message. Yeah. So this was all a thing of like, well, the music actually is in itself political in various factors, the sound itself, and so you get into all this, like philosophy of perception and stimulus and intensity and all this sort of stuff. And so we picked a phrase that was kind of our moniker, was what was it? What is heard in sound is the non-face, and that was splattered about all over the TechNet stuff. Again, it's a.
Do you want to just explain that a bit clearer, Howard? That phrase, because I remember that from your TechNet.
Yeah, what is heard in sound is the non-face. So it retaliates against, let's say, the celebrity facial aspect of pop and music, and pausing this and pausing that, and saying that there's something else to be heard in sound. If you know what I mean. If it's quite, it's more of a metaphor, because the techno outfits, some of them, wore masks like Drexciya and Underground Resistance. There was this resistance to being, typecast or easily identified. There was this whole sense of subterranean manoeuvres, if you know what I mean. And so that was a key phrase for us. Stuff like talking about, at that time, music might have been seen as passive. You received it passively. Other, like, language was active or visual was somehow active, but listening was seen as like, it could be seen as a poor man's sense, whatever. So we were thinking about how what the effect of music has on us in relation to techno, and so we operate the music. As a listener, we are the operator. So that was another phrase that was coined at that time to sort of say, no, reception, hearing this stuff, is an intensifier. It creates thought, even, It gets getting into a bit.
What's interesting about that as well, actually, because you talked about how like all your I guess your jazz improv mates were like against this sort of music, but like in one way, loads of the real sort of cult jazz figures like Miles Davis or like you know, Sun Ra and like, you know, and they're all, you know, and obviously some more obscure artists than them. You know, there was that whole scene of like using jazz for this similar sort of thing back in the day as like some sort of underground music that's going to take you these places through sound, and there's and you know, obviously some of it is purely instrumental.
Yeah, no, I think that's.
You think they could see them links a bit easier?
Yeah. I mean, there's Miles Going Electric in Off the Corner, which is one of my favourite albums of all time. And but you've also got the free jazz stuff, and the free jazzers had to come to Europe because no one was putting their stuff out in America. You know, Milford Graves, Art Ensemble of Chicago, all these people, and of course with Sun Ra, you've got electronics. He fucked about on all kinds of synthesizers. So I think
he was using. I know they sent him one of the first Moogs. They sent Sun Ra. He had like
the and there's them great tracks of his where he's just tinkering around for half an hour on a Moog. You know, like wow. So I think these things eventually became, you know, more united in a sense. It wasn't so frowned upon, the techno, because I remember I think I might have mentioned it last time, being at a rave with a free jazzer mate and like going, fucking hell, what, this acid, this noise, you know, whoa, you can't make that out of a sax. You know what I mean? Like there was this sense that, well, it's like Edgar de Varese, the French composer. I think he was the first of them composers to make electronic music, and he used to say, I'm done with orchestras. I want a synthesizer. Yeah. He was imagining what a synthesizer could be, you know. So
didn't he use loads of sirens and sounds of the city and stuff like that?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, he used a lot of. I think he also made a whole symphony for percussion, which was pretty rare, you know. So.
I remember playing some of my students some Edgar Varese, and they were a bit gobsmacked, like, what the fuck is this? Yeah,
I guess that's where I ended up, sort of almost post-techno in a way, exploring all that stuff again, going through that stuff. But I guess sort of, going back to the TechNet thing and the writing, it was like, you know, talking of music as a counterculture, channeling intensity. You have this thing of like you're writing from within the music. You know, the music is the intensifier to the language, not the other way around. So it was like not only giving credibility to the music, but spreading its intensity by the sort of poetic-y type language that we used in TechNet. That was like, you know, I did a lot of review writing, and the review for me was a forum for poetry, if you know what I mean, to mad reviews that go off about something else. So I began to, like, you know, like...
Were you not talking about the music, Howard? Were you not talking about the music? Or like, were you not talking about the music? Just going off on some mad poem, like,
Yeah, well, it got to a point where I just write a poem as a record review, you know, type of thing. So and doing sleeve notes and you know, run off grooves, like just these different places to put writing, because like we said, TechNet was free as a flyer, so people pick it up. There was every record shop. There was always a place where all the rave flyers were, or club flyers. At that time, there were like loads of them. So
you must have had quite a few confused punters picking up TechNet, thinking it's like some all-night rave, and then being confronted by what is in sound is the non-face.
And other such slogans.
No, it's good. It's a good strategy, and it's, you know, like I said, out of the bookshop into the record shop.
Yeah, well, no, it's definitely to do with that cross-mixing, you know, like a very anti-media stance that later became sort of picking up on Guattari's phrase, post-media operators, basically a different version of do-it-yourself. But talking of do-it-yourself, then there was a lot of zines around at that time. They slowly started appearing. There was Shimmer, from Chilling FM. I remember interviewing Unit Mobius and Somatic Responses by Fax for that.
I used to write for that. Yeah. I used to write reviews on that, and there's actually, I think I did a tour around Germany, and I did a whole piece about that. I keep meaning to dig that out. I've got that somewhere. Because, I remember John put the unfortunate title he put on the cover, because you remember John who ran Chilling FM. He put Controlled Weirdness, Blitzkrieg's Deutschland on the cover.
Right.
That was the title. So I just want to say I didn't write that title, but
yeah. I was a character, John, a real character, because I met him in Stratford. You see, he was based in East Ham, somewhere like that. So I used to meet up with him a few times. Canning Town, Then he mentioned Techno Connection when he was in Australia, and I used to write for that as well. Some In Vogue, I used to call it. It was kind of, bigging up the underground versus the sort of media colonisation, a bit of it, and stuff like that. And that had, like, as Ian said, a list of tapes in it and record reviews. Then going through my folder was one called Fascis. One from Wales, Panacea, and one from France that was pretty good indeed was TNT, Michel Comte, a friend of Christophe's. So we're kind of getting near to the Dead by Dawn thing in a way, because all this was being generated by Dead by Dawn as much as anything else. And that was sort of, founded. I can't remember if it was. I think Jason and Christophe hatched it, and being in TechNet, I got involved, and Nomex got involved. And Jason had access, or was a member of the Anarchist Centre in Railton Road, and they had a basement. So, and at that time, mainly the music coming out the anarchist scene, late 80s, early 90s, was your thrash punk, like we're talking the agitprop music. So I think Jason had to do a bit of convincing for the committee, or,
Well, again, I think we talked a little bit about Travellers and that sort of stuff, and like how, basically that scene from the end of the 80s. They took a little while to switch into like the rave techno sort of thing, but like you said, there was that scene of people thinking, it's not real, it's not the real music, it's certainly not as revolutionary as like 2 Hours of Hawkwind or like Oscar Tentacles, or like I said, or Crass, or even them sort of bands. It wasn't overtly political, so I know and some of that crew were a bit more against that, and obviously, that to be fair, there were parties that were going on all night, and they could just see people partying all night as well. It wasn't just people sitting down theorising all night.
Like at TechNet head office. But
do you know what? Do you know when the first Dead by Dawn was? What the date was of that? The first one.
93.
It's like, was it 93, 94, wasn't it? Yeah.
Thinking 93-ish.
But
of course, you touched on Spiral Tribe as well. I think Spiral Tribe were a big force at that time that influenced the travelling scene. Of course, they were travellers themselves, weren't they? So the whole free party scene and all that sort of stuff, which interconnected with Dead by Dawn, as later did the Technivals, the travelling sound systems.
For sure. So, tell us a bit about the one-to-one centre in Railton Road, like where Dead by Dawn was. Like you said, like Jason was like working with them. Do you know much about that place before the parties were there?
There was, I guess, from the 70s. We're talking back squats again. I think 121 was a squatted building that like people took over as an anarchist centre where different things, events will go on, a bookshop. There was a printing place there where some Dead by Dawn flyers were printed. So it was like a nexus for people to go to as a free space. From all across London, people would go, you know. Various events going on there, talks, speeches, political meetings, all this sort of stuff. It was eventually evicted sometime in the 90s. The council took it back, but it was a black women's centre, I believe, at one point as well, in the 70s.
No, well, yeah, because I think they really should have got the we talked before about, I think, how if you were 12 years in a place, the old law used to be that you could take over the place, but I'm not sure what happened. I think they were trying to do that, but obviously they didn't succeed because actually, because it is just normal flats now. I have walked past it at 121 Railton Road. There's just flats there. Yeah,
they must have floored it and built up there. Because
so eventually, they like a lot of these places just disappeared.
Yeah, sad. But it had a long, fairly longish life. But Jason was involved.
So talk about like the starting Dead by Dawn there down at the 121.
Yeah, what would I say? I guess a series of meetings took place, and then we finally got access to the 121 to put it on. It was a slow starting thing. It was mainly like a hangout for people to talk about music and, sharing a lot of stuff. I seem to remember that, really.
Because I remember one thing that, I don't know if this happened from the very start, because I didn't go to the very early ones there, but you always used to have talks in the evening before the party, didn't you?
That's right.
Was that something that happened from the start? Or?
Yeah, I think it was. The Sadie plant, all kinds of people turned up there. London Psychogeographical Society, Association, Autonomous Astronauts might have given a talk, so it became a hub for the counterculture stuff, and I think it was a good idea having these talks, beforehand, and then the music kick in and obviously go on all night. So it was vibrant times. It was probably one of the easiest running collectives I've been involved in. Just a shared enthusiasm and sharing stuff. It just seemed to be natural, functioning. I don't know how to describe it. It was, well, maybe I'm looking at rose-tinted glasses, but it just seemed an easy little collective, the Dead by Dawn one. There was no... Yeah,
I guess you had your own sort of roles. I guess you had, like you said, you and Jason were TechNet, had Christoph, and then you had like Paul Nomex doing like these crazy sort of visuals and video sort of stuff.
Yeah, Nomex was crucial in that sense. He was still, I'll say still, but he like the montage, found footage stuff he'd be showing. Was it Nomex Realist Film Unit? And it wasn't very realist at all.
Yes.
But what a character. He was like, just sort of sharing stuff, records. You talk about buying records, going around town. Christoph would sell records. Simon Underground? And so labels for me that were kind of prominent, say European ones, would be Bunker, definitely. The Hague. I still have a love of that sound.
Me too.
PCP, so we go to parties, VFM parties, kind of more linked to PCP stuff.
That was over in Stratford Way, wasn't it? That was at a place called The Wax. There's a club called The Wax, which is actually, that's demolished now. That's more or less where it was Waterden Road, which is more or less where the Olympics were like a few years later. So, there was a big dog track there as well. So, that's all disappeared. But, that was quite a mad club, the Wax, run by some, Yeah, yeah. Some East London people, I'll just say that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. Might have seen the movie there. I don't know. Yeah, amazing stuff. So yeah, Bunker. Then I was quite close to Christoph the Babylon and Crossfade Entertainment. So I did sleeve notes for them on one of their compilations.
Because they put out some of the early Unit Mobius stuff as well, didn't they?
They did. They put out an album called Queekin, which I think means chicken. Really, really good record. I'm regretting losing or selling that at some point stupidly. But yeah, so that, because yeah, like I said, I was in fax communication at that time with Jan Dweven Voorden of Unit Mobius, so that's where the interview came from. I think it was an interview with Crossfade, because another zine started for Ian Trowell in Sheffield called Autotoxicity, which was a joy to behold. So,
oh yeah, I do remember that actually. Yeah, I've got some of them somewhere. Yeah, that was an amazing magazine.
Yeah, just literally amazing. And so I used to send faxes of stuff to UR, and they'd send a fax back, which I've still got. So yeah, that's kind of trying to conjure that zone, and how writing interconnected with it, how writing out of music, And then I think it became the joke Flint Michigan Underground Services, where towards the end of Dead by Dawn period, you'd be looking at like Jason and Scud had set up a label, Ambush. Nomex would have Adverse, yourself, Unearthly, maybe there's some other labels. So labels started to spring out from Dead by Dawn, if you know what I mean, like initiatives for labels.
Yeah, and they were quite diverse. They were different sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Because I say like Dead by Dawn was kind of known for its kind of hard, fast music, like techno and early gabbery and speedcore and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. But I remember I used to play down there lots, and I'd play like Drexciya and like some mad Detroit electro. I would play some really fast acid as well, because it was Dead by Dawn, early drop bass network and stuff like that. But I remember playing I definitely remember playing Doppler Effect and like early Drexciya and stuff like that as well. Electronome.
Yeah, I think that's where we twigged, we connected around that stuff. I think the electro.
No, I think it was. Yeah. No, I remember chatting to you loads about that. Yeah, that's an incredible record. Yeah.
I still don't know who did that. It could be IF, or it could be one of the Italian people. I don't know, but
I think IF's involved in that. But
yeah, we had so buying records from IF. Remember we talked about that from Bunker stuff, Reference, and then he had a label Fulex, Murder Capital, and all that sort of stuff, which I was big into that stuff. Just like their attitude in The Hague. Another one like TechNet phrase would be "No stars here," and they were they were putting on free parties and stuff in The Hague. Some incredible records that like Car Tracks, Sulphur Surfer versus Interference, like gong, 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 just out there.
No, again, they were on their own sort of buzz, weren't they? They were, and like you said, they weren't doing it to be stars. They totally had their underground sort of, they were anti-commercial, but like doing these amazing sort of records.
Yeah, very much. I've wrote a lot about The Hague across different zines. I've noticed about 3 different ones, reviews of the records. They were, and I guess the SP23 passed through there, Mark Spiral, because there's records made between Spiral and Unit Mobius. yeah, I don't know whether I'm getting it across well, but just that excitement and passion for music, you know.
Yeah, have you seen it? There actually is like a really short little documentary about all the Dutch stuff. It's on YouTube. It's from about 15 years ago, but it's from actually MTV. But they interview Ferring. It's very sort of low budget sort of style, but it's really cool. And it's sort of, like I said, it's only about 20 minutes, but it's all like interviews all the sort of main characters, and they're just driving around The Hague and just showing in their studios, and it's very sort of, yeah, check it out.
Yeah, no, I look for that.
It's very low. It's very lo-fi because there's not that much stuff where they're talking on the internet.
No, they were. I remember. Yeah, I think I remember first coming across them in Under One Sky. That zine we mentioned. I think that was done by an American woman, and I thought, oh, these sound interesting. You know what I mean? And then you finally come across them.
Yeah.
So, I guess as you and Ian mentioned, you know, your music interests are interweaving with different people, and you're learning about different stuff all the time, you know, and lots of characters.
Yeah.
You know,
can I say one thing about TechNet? Like, can I say one thing about TechNet? Because there was one piece that you wrote. I think the piece that I really liked. It's on the Yellow or something. It's the bit that you write, and it maybe you can just explain it, or you say something like each party was the end of an era. That's the one I really like.
Yeah.
Do you remember this? Or
that might, I must remember. I mean, Christoph put a PDF of the TechNet stuff up on Dataside website. Each point was the end of an era. Yeah. I guess there was all this stuff about, well, Dead by Dawn, The Night, a nihilistic kind of politics. That intensity didn't mean that you cared so much for tomorrow. In a way. Yeah. That sense of music as sort of timeless in a way as well. Like, I often think that you can be listening to something and, well, fucking hell, it's, you know, where did that time go? You know what I mean? Like, so music and time, you know, like this temporality that can be suspended. And all night parties, you're almost in the witching hour where who notices the hour 3, you know, in the night, you know, this sort of thing.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, well, Dead by Dawn was one of them places you stagger out at 7 in the morning, and I remember a few times going to find some calf with, like, you know, to have like a English fry up, you know, like what?
Chips and beans, I think.
Down Acre Lane or something like that.
Yeah. Funny enough, somebody reviewed TechNet. It might have been Matthew Fuller. I'll just read what he said about it.
Sure.
TechNet. Some kind of glorified techno flyer passing itself off as a bulletin of the digital underground, arguing for techno as the locus of a new counterculture. Has too much bass gone to their heads, or are these pretentious scribblings encouragement for a tentative optimism? Flight lines guiding us to a politics of desire, slippery messages concerning beautiful thought patterns possessed of the art of disappearance. Theories of identity that liberate the soul in the dance of all possibilities. They're out there, somewhere beyond words. That's quite good.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a definite sense of pretension going on as well.
Yeah, that's one of the most pretentious reviews I've ever heard, but I like it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think there was that, like, also, like, from a working class background, you know, there was always that, my mum would say, oh, don't be so pretentious. You know, there's this word, you know, like above your station.
Why? What happened, Howard? Did you not listen to her? Yeah.
No, I didn't. Did I? No. But there's always that sense of a conflict, like around it. Like, should I be doing it? Should I be saying this? Or fuck it?
Well, that might be a working class thing, because I think like you feel more guilty doing that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I think if you're middle class, you may be, you know, you just feel entitled, you get away with that shit. But I know for me, like, same thing. As soon as I start going into them sort of realms, I do almost want to check myself and like just want to start swearing again or something, you know. But
Well, I mean, in writing in general,
scared to be intellectual.
Yeah. I like to mix the low and the high though when I write as well, you know. So if I'm writing poetry these days, it's got street, you know, it's got a mix of language in, because you have that, like you say, a sense of guilt around it. But then I think when you denied it, in a sense, you want it. There's a certain, I don't know, thrill in using this language in a way. Yeah, and then to put it out on a free flyer sort of dampens its pretension. It's not coming out in an academic journal, though we did play.
No, it's true. That's a good point, actually. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, because there are some of them journals that the only people who read them are the people who write in them. That is a very insular sort of scene. In a way, it's a bit like the jazz improv scene. You're saying that the only people who sees your weird performance with the toolkit is the other people doing the weird performances. It's that insular sort of scene. So I think, if you throw it out into the real world, I guess you could call it, or just so if someone picks it up, you know, and does go, wow, what the fuck is this? You know, those are things that, you know, can change something. You know, you said earlier, you said the last episode, just walking through Hackney and hearing all the pirate radio coming out of like flats and cars and stuff like that. You know, so just putting the stuff out there, that people can actually check it out. You know, in one way, that's what we're doing now. That's partly my aim for this, is just to put the stories out on the podcast, the tales from a disappearing city. So get them out there. Yeah, you know.
Well, that's it, because it's like you don't need a big audience. In a sense, you just need one or two people to stumble across it and do something else with it. I mean, for all its highfalutedness, the writings of Deleuze and Guattari were similarly intended, though they were, one was a psychoanalyst and one was a philosopher. I mean, you know, the psychoanalyst was practically engaged with helping people with mental illness. You know, like, so there is a certain sense of that in their writings. Just take it and use it. You know, pick it up, take it on. You know, you don't have to encapsulate the whole thing, which I've never been very good at. Read countless books, but I can't really encapsulate them. It's always going in for little bits. You know, you could read and not understand something, and then you understand something. You know what I mean? Yeah, so it's a bit like music. You know, it's like, I remember, for some unknown reason, I was disappointed with the double pack by Drexciya. Now, how on earth could I have been disappointed with it at first? That's almost a confession. But, you know, within a few days, maybe it's the hype of it. Oh, God, I've got this new Drexciya one. You know what I mean? And, you know, absolutely love that. You know, everything they've done. So, again, it's like with other stuff, the bit more outre stuff that I get into in the late 90s, going back to like avant-garde electronics, Todd Dockstad, Luke Ferrari, Parmigiani, all these people. You persevere with it, you know. It's not easy.
Well, so like some stuff it takes you a while before you actually sort of like it. I mean, you know, I mean, not everything. Some stuff you're just not going to like. You don't have to like everything, but there are some things that the first listen or first few listens, it takes you a while to hear it. No, it's different stuff demands a different ear from you. Like, you have to operate it in a different way, you know. So so Dead by Dawn, it's like they had 23 parties, didn't they? They finished Dead by Dawn.
That's right.
You know? There was a decision to stop Dead by Dawn. Do you remember that? Do you remember that decision, or do you remember talking about that as a collective? Or
I don't. What's the double pack? The Praxis 23. Did we do 22?
Yeah, that was Praxis 23, but because there was a build-up, wasn't there? There was a build-up. You know, there was a decision to stop it because it was almost. Maybe successful isn't the word, but like it was, you know, it was it was becoming a regular party though. It was like people would, you know, it was once a month. I should say Dead by Dawn. It was monthly, and I think it ran either 23 or possibly 24 parties. I can't remember if you know, but there was a decision in advance. I remember there was a countdown to the last Dead by Dawn.
Yeah, again, that's kind of linked to some of the political stuff we were involved in. You know, like you self-dissolve yourself. You know, you close it down and go and do different stuff. Like people went to do labels, and I went to do breakflow, so I concentrated more on the writing. But yeah, I remember it just seemed, again, a natural thing that we all just, yeah. No one's like, oh no, we can't do that. No, it was just, yeah, that's perfect. That fits in to our ethos. That fits in.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Whether there were 23 parties or whether the double pack, Dead by Dawn double pack was the 23rd, I can't remember. But we'd probably like that idea
might be
of a
something
party.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'd like the idea that the party comes in a double pack and it can go on infinitum because you can play it all the time. But that was the...
Yeah.
I think Jason was very good on design and stuff like that, and I think he came up with the idea, we did a record insert. TechNet's last one was a square record insert in the shape of vinyl, even with label art on it. And each section was called a track. So we had a record and we had a written record, which I really like that. You know, that idea of placing music in different places. So we could read.
Yeah. Well, I remember I had a track on that album as well. Yeah.
You did, called Chrysler. I remember coming down to your place while you were making that.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
and there's also a clip of me on pirate radio, actually, that's on there that Nomex recorded. He's on the start of one of the sides. Do you remember that?
I might have done, yeah.
Well, there's a little bit he cuts in. There's about 30 seconds to a minute of me on Chilling FM talking about. And it's no reference, but it's just because I think he cut in loads of weird little recordings between the tracks. And the start of one of the sides is actually me on the radio. And it's talking about get down to Dead by Dawn in Railton Road. Yeah. There's only a few to go. Blah blah blah, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, that's on the run in on one of the records.
Yeah, we went
because I did actually have a guy at a festival in Portugal a couple of years ago. He come up to me and he was like, oh, that's he was talking to me and he was like, no, that's you on the record. Yeah, I've some weird little link that he'd heard because he'd had it on a mix or something like. Yeah, like it's really, really random little, That's
amazing. But that's the sort of thing, though, that you were doing, because the old 23 thing, as out of boroughs, 23 Skidoo, the magic number, Temple of Psychic Youth, like this kind of magic thing, that it's linked to surrealism, like the chance encounter, So that album, we went to town, not only the sleeve notes, the run-off grooves on each one, and like you say, the Nomex, because Nomex was documenting Dead by Dawn, so he just before every track, there was a snippet of his documentation. There's one sort of a cat on a tank in acid, a cat on a tank. Someone says something crazy like that. So
there's not actually a cat on a tank in acid. Yeah.
Was it that?
Yeah. No. But yeah. There was a few random recordings that you put in of some, because you obviously got a few interesting characters down at Railton Road at 3 in the morning.
Yeah. I was used to see Darkest How walk by, a great black.
I remember that. Yeah, he lived around the corner, didn't
he? Yeah, he did. He used to wait. I was at the door, and we'd go, "Darkest Marcus," and he'd wave at us. It was like, and then come across him a bit. Great man. Passed away, didn't he? But great company.
Yeah, no, he did. I mean, he's got a long radical history, and there's a great shot of him at the Battle of Lewisham, of like him speaking at that on like Clifton Rise in New Cross. He's like hanging onto a lamppost speaking to all these people. Obviously, where for those who don't know, the Battle of Lewisham, 1977, was when the National Front walked through South London and loads of people turned up to basically stop them and fight them, and but there's a great picture of Darkest How, like just doing a speech from like a lamppost and like a sea of people. Yeah,
brilliant stuff. I don't know whether he was involved in that Mangrove Cafe that got busted by the cops, the Mangrove 7.
I think he was. I think he was involved in like that whole West. I mean, again, that's a whole other scene, but I think he was involved in that whole West London underground sort of scene from the late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah, we're getting into a different sector of history there in terms of like New Beacon books and the black counterculture. Brilliant, but dub, etc.
Yeah. Okay. Well, back to the 90s then. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just thought it'd be an idea to read one of the more poetic-y bits, especially related to your mentioning.
Each party was the end of an era.
I was saying, there's a poem here, and it's called "Inside the Night." So we've got this sort of idea that we're in the night, suspended. So it's like a little poem thing that came on the back of one of the TechNets. Funnily enough, on the front it's got "Each party was the end of an era, something to take and use, compose yourself, move." So that's on the front. So obviously there's a link, inside the night. So inside the night, everything disappears into packs. Days were the dichotomy of light and dark reigns, but night takes a trip inside itself, whispering and unushered, a continual offer of bewilderment. This is a night where the invisible cannot cease to be sensed, and being at first shadow, then part sound, this invisible starts over. A night of enhanced light, a night that oscillates, tempting its inhabitants to take associative leaps, a nocturnal ellipsis, fending off day, its words and diffusions. Dawn is an agony of dark light, understood as time reimposing itself, a cyclical gridlock of geometry. So, that's one of the more sort of poetic, trying to evoke the sense of Dead by Dawn. It's obviously totally inspired by being at Dead by Dawn. It could never have been written without the experience of Dead by Dawn, which was like another spur to the writing. You know, you were involved, so you were energised and wanted to honour it, in a sense, honour what went on there. So it's like a little epitaph or whatever, to try and conjure that frame of mind, feeling kind of free within an unfree society,
I mean, it was, it was the autonomous zone, if you want to use that sort of phrase, and it was a space where all sorts of, like I said, you had the talks early in the evening, you had the music all night, and it was a congregation of different sort of people, and a mixture of music, and I always used to look forward to going there to meet people, and part of it was the music, but part of it was the chat and the discussion as well, because you had the basement, didn't you, which was where it was the dark, and it had the strobe, and funny enough, actually, I've got two speakers in my front room which you can't see from the camera.
Right.
Jason Skeet gave them to me, and they were actually original Dead by Dawn speakers. Yeah, so I've literally got them here as they're not actually plugged in, because I think they were quite battered, the speakers, but they've got like I like the fact that I've got these two speakers. Great, they were in that space.
The speakers live on.
Yeah, but so you had all the music down in the basement, and it was like dark and like strobe and like very sort of rave cave in the basement, and then upstairs, you just had more like the space where people like just drinking cans and chatting. And then was there something upstairs? There wasn't upstairs. What was upstairs?
There was a little room upstairs. I think we kept some of our stuff up there, and that's where I interviewed Somatic Responses when they came down. So it'd be a little place to go, like the little office type of thing, where we count it out.
Yeah. No. Obviously that's where I met the Somatics boys there, John and Paul, who obviously great guys. Shout out to them.
One.
I saw them recently, actually. Yeah,
I remember them. They were full on. They really put out a lot of stuff, didn't they? You know what I mean? They made the trip down.
Yeah, and our good friend Brandon, I met him down there. Brandon Spivey.
They had a release on Drop Bass Network, didn't they? Even Richie. They were two mates of Jason.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I think they were on the Dead by Dawn pack, weren't they? Double pack. Like I said, coming out of that was obviously the minimal profits we made from Dead by Dawn went into the record. We've touched on, and then different people were making different labels. Like I said, I sort of drifted to do more writing stuff. Start the Break Floor moniker thing. Again, that's linked to Deleuze and Guattari, this notion of break and flow. And so I think the first one was more like a magazine with bits of writing, underground stuff. Alex Trocky, a novelist called Ronald Sukinik, who wrote a great book called Out. I think I interviewed him. And there was a music section in that I printed separately, about 50. So there was like middle pages, and in there was record reviews, communique from Praxis, probably bunker stuff about bunker. Then the second break floor was mainly like literary studies, Kafka, Proust, but more of a journal, like a kind of mocking academic journal. I did a text called The Unconscious and Music, so we can see where this line of thinking's going, like, and an essay on factory that ended up on a website as well first, called Graveyard and Ballroom. That links to what we could also chat about, you know, my experiences in Manchester and the electronic post-punk stuff. And then probably the third was a record, because I obviously had access to people who were making records, and it was like Breakflow could link up with yourself, Unearthly. We did that System UCS track with Adverse, Nomex, with Praxis. I think it was called New Acephal, the shoe, and obviously I'd run off grooves, and Jason designed the label, so it was like a collaborative effort. So it was good to, you know, put a record out as well. But it was only ever going to be a one.
Was that the idea then? Just get some music out related to the, related to the stuff that you're writing about, or?
Well, yeah, I think it was just like, well, it's in that spirit of post-punk. There's a lot of people making music. Go and collaborate with them and make a track. You know what I mean? Like with yourself, you know. This idea that I didn't want to put out a record of my own because I didn't have access to any kit. You know, I'd lost my bass guitar many moons ago, as part of the M11 link reel disaster, which incidentally they used to put on really good bass.
Yeah, well, we did a track together, didn't we, for that record? You know, we made a track. You come over to my studio.
Yeah.
Yeah, System UCS. Yeah, Memory Trace. Yeah, do you remember much about that? Because I think we did that in an afternoon, didn't we? More or less, or a few hours. Didn't take that long.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was living in the Old Kent Road at the time, and I
remember bringing some records down.
You know, I had like a Casio FZ1 sampler and an Atari, I believe. I'm not sure what else I had. Yeah. But you come over, you bought some records, didn't you?
Yeah,
or we sampled some stuff up.
We can mention what they are, but one of them was an American avant-garde electronic thing that we took a bit off there. And a cassette of Pinter reading out his screenplay from Proust that was on BBC. Christ knows why I brought that, but that ended out as it's Harold Pinter's. It's Harold Pinter's voice.
Yeah, that's what you were listening to on your Walkman.
Remembrance of things passed down the elephant. Yeah. No, it was good fun, and you put it up, haven't you, on your website? It still sounds quite fresh.
Yeah, well, it's on YouTube. It's on YouTube, and actually, there's a compilation coming out very soon, which obviously you know about. That's picking out some obscure 90s sort of releases, and that track we did, the Memory Trace, and by System UCS we were called, that's going to be in that compilation coming out. Should be out in the next month or so. I know they've been it's taken ages to press records at the moment, but it could still be a massive hit, you know, coming out. But yeah, if you if you search System UCS Memory Trace, it's up on my YouTube channel where this podcast is, so you can listen to a, I don't know what you'd call our track, but it's kind of a weird, mournful electro, got a bit of Drexia, a bit of I don't know, a bit of this, bit of that. How would you describe it? How would you want the pretentious reviews?
It's quite moody, isn't it? It's quite moody. It's slow. It's slower paced, and it's stealthy and moody.
Yeah.
And I seem to think you really did, like piecing it together in a way that fit. I don't know how to, it's definitely a bit electro bit. I think there's a sample of a drum machine from a early 80s record single on it.
Right.
So I think that gives it a kind of longevity as well, because as these drum machines become sought after, don't they, these old drum machines. I remember we're touching on another discussion, but I remember Eric Random, a brilliant drum machine track for a Drutty column called Madeline, and I was like, whoa, this sound, like that, brilliant stuff. So yeah, it was a good afternoon, and like I say, it didn't take us long. It didn't take us long at all.
Can you just tell us about because I saw a few people asking online about this record because of the title. Because you say what the title is, and because someone helped fund the record, didn't they?
Murad Qureshi. I was working for a secondary housing co-op, which is kind of like a housing association, and he was just interested in stuff, and I think he had a bit of money, and he sort of lent me the money to put it out, so I entitled it Murad Qureshi EP, and Murad went on to become a Labour member of the GLA, very first Bengali politician in the 90s. Nice fella. Just very intrigued by stuff.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. Because I saw someone writing that they couldn't understand obviously why this Labour councillor name was referenced on this weird experimental electronica record, but that's really cool that he was. Like you said, he was intrigued and he helped fund it.
Yeah, I just think,
the money anyway.
Again, it's an incongruity as well that I quite liked. The name back in the day.
Yeah. I don't think Keir Starmer would be lending any money.
I won't put his fucking name on anything either. But, so, no, it's kind of good. It just adds to that intrigue, you know what I mean? That's always, with anything, this sense of ambiguity and intrigue that can draw you in, like this Magic 23 type fortuitousness I quite like, and just a bit challenging without being in your face, like subtle, like, oh, why is that? You know what I mean? That's the spark of thought to me, this,
Yeah, no, for sure.
This inquisitiveness,
Yeah, but it was an interesting selection of artists on that EP, and like you said, it's just like, it's like quite a cool random document of the time. Was that the end of Breakflow then? Was that the final Breakflow? Did you do any more Breakflow after that, or was that the last thing you did?
I'm trying to think. I did an unpublished weird cut up prose thing I did one called Floor Coma after the 80s 808 State track. I just loved it. I never heard it. I heard it referenced, and I was like, fuck, this track, I must hear it. And I eventually did. I was like, whoa, it's great UK acid pumping. And so I did a lot.
That's the one that's meant to be with a guy called Gerald did that as well. A guy called Gerald.
There was all that dispute between them lot, weren't there? But I did various stuff, like a lot of it remained, all of it remains more or less unpublished. I never got round to putting it out. And so, like I said, towards the late 90s, being into Mill Plateau stuff took me back to study like early electronic music, Varese Poème Électronique, finding Todd Dockstarder. I think, like you mentioned, Nomex was a fan, And Doc Starter was a brilliant, because he was more of an amateur than a classical composer. Todd Doc Starter was like a cartoon maker, cartoon editor. So he would transfer from visual images to sound, because he would cut and splice tapes in early electronic music. So, and another big favourite, lasting big favourite, is Luke Ferrari. Again, he does a lot of sound collage. I'm very attracted to that oral montage stuff. And Bernard Parmigiani, you know, like sort of Cosmos style music concrete, like really big sounding. And, you know, this was, so exploring the you know, manufactured split between electronic music proper, based in Germany, Cologne, and music concrete in Paris. So there was a polemical thing for a while between different approaches to electronic music, you know. In a way, the Germans were looking at generating sine tones, whereas the French were looking at making objects sound and sound unfamiliar. So there was it's pure electronic music in a sense from Germany, but that divide's a bit useless, and it doesn't really fit to the way things progressed. You know, there's an intermingling of all this stuff. So, but I remember Luke Ferrari would do. I think he put out a single with a guy called Matt One from Manchester, who was in a sort of improv outfit called Stockhausen and Walkman, and so yeah, I'd be going down. Okay, I remember going down these records at that time, so I went exploring down these records in Elephant, sadly closed shop, so shut down shop, should I say. So they stopped all this stuff, so it was like, well, I'll give myself a crash course in the history of electronic music and its environment.
Yeah, no, for sure. Were you getting more of the more standard techno where you by then, or were you just in a
bit of both? I think I'd followed drum and bass up to like Fierce and Nico. I loved that No U-Turn stuff.
I used to play poker with Nico, actually. Yeah.
Well, that's a long story. That's to be
he was a cool character.
Put with your Trip to New Orleans podcast in it as well. Poker with Nico on the Trip to New Orleans. Trip Hop was there as well at that time, and I don't know, I just suddenly got drawn to exploring this other stuff. Like this historical stuff, I suppose, and seeing where it took me. So I was getting, I'd say I was getting a little tired of two-step, whatever it was called, and it felt rigidity a bit. Might be wrong, but
I mean, I kind of got bored in the drum and bass sort of scene about that time, 97, 98 sort of time. It was sort of getting a bit sort of tired for me. You know, so I was really into jungle and all that sort of stuff, and I loved all the, like you said, the dirty sort of mad no U-turn.
There was a label
stuff,
called,
and then it just went a bit.
Penny Black that put out some good stuff. The name of the band or group outfit escapes me. There was that dark stuff, and also like Source Direct quite a bit as well, but. Definitely the No U-Turn stuff, and I think it got like endless intros on drum and bass tracks, you know what I mean? And then the All Men's would break in, and you could like literally plot your day, you know, plot the moment. So, looking for something again to make the ear inquisitive.
Thanks, Howard. Join us next time for another Tales from a Disappearing City.